you're a fraud.
You're a liberal hack.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 4 of The Hack and the Fraud. My name is Ryan. I am joined once again by the inimitable Nick.
Hello again.
And today we will be discussing the 2020 Australian Western film High Ground. High Ground was directed by Stephen Maxwell Johnson. It stars Jacob Jr. Nayinggul, Simon Baker, Callan Mulvey, Aaron Peterson, Ryan Kaur, Karen Pistorius, and Sean Manananga.
Travis, where's his family?
They're calling him the Wild Mob, brought together by one man, Baywara.
Nayinggul.
Baywara, naruh na ba dyan? Kuduk.
All right, Nicholas, what did you think of High Ground?
Right, Ryan. I am super high on this movie, and I'm hoping that you're not because I'm ready for an argument. I'm ready to bring it. No, I really think this will be in the future, near future, revered as an Australian classic.
I think in the near future you'll be revered as an idiot for that opinion.
I love it. So we're gonna have
We have a bit of a disagreement.
We have an argument.
A discord.
All right. So I'll start with why I think it's quite good. I thought it was a beautiful, beautiful movie, just like astonishingly beautiful. Like I don't think I've seen a movie quite this beautiful in this landscape shots. Its color is just vivid color, and the performance is really kind of the backdrop to like the landscape. It's like basically taking that to a new level, I think. Mm-hmm. I loved the contrast of how beautiful the film is against the deplorable acts of violence throughout the movie. I thought that was really well done. Mm-hmm. I did love like I said, the performances were all very, very good. I think Simon Baker was a very strong lead.
Well, first let's go back to how it looked, because sure. I can agree with you there. It was a beautifully shot film. This is the thing. This is what I look for in a Western, and especially an Australian Western. There was something about the landscape that I think, because we're Australian, obviously, not just the landscape, but the sound design, which I felt tied in really well.
Oh, yeah.
It was instantly recognizable and familiar. You know, the call of the magpie or the little like fire ants or the snake and whatever it was, the sounds and the visuals together, kind of blew me away. That was
amazing.
Something about I loved it. And all these like beautiful helicopter shots, well, probably drone shots these days, but same thing. Of the Australian landscape, and this is why more Australian Westerns specifically should be made, because Australian movies are great in general when you can show off the Australian landscape, but I think the Western gives you that ability probably more than any other kind of Australian movie. So with you there, it gets pretty much full marks. And also it was shot in not 16:9, right? It was kind of more of a square format, wasn't it?
Yes, I didn't notice that, so I'm gonna. Which probably
I don't know why, but it's similar to kind of like The Lighthouse or other movies of recent times. What was that that horror movie set in early North American kind of
The Witch?
The Witch, also that same sort of format, and I don't know, that kind of reminds me of old newsreels and instantly kind of transports me back into that sort of olden times vibe, which, you know, anyway, that's just a little thing that did well.
So essentially I think that was like you said, the sound design was essentially, the score was just nature amplified, and I really
true. There wasn't any music,
yeah.
really, was there?
No, and the quiet times where it really sort of dropped down to for the more suspenseful moments of the film was just like done so perfectly. So I think we're in agreement there. So it's full marks for the sound design.
Yeah, the tension wasn't from kind of like a
visuals.
violin or anything. It was kind of, you know, crickets or something rising in crescendo, like insect noises and bird noises kind of crescendoing to create the tension that a score normally would, which brilliant. Loved it.
Really, yeah. No, that's exactly right. I think you mentioned before. Yeah, so we watched News of the World last week, and I think this is where it kind of failed, the movie, the News of the World. It just did not... It wasn't inspired in terms of how they tried to shoot I mean, it was okay, but it was just...
It was by the numbers.
This film was inspired, I think. It's just set this sort of cinematography and visuals to a new level, especially for Australian cinema, I think.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm thinking it's a classic. I thought the opening act in particular for mine was just really outstanding, especially
kind of the prologue in the 12 years before. So yeah, we'll kind of just run quickly through the plot. At the start of the movie, there's Simon Baker and a crew of white guys are essentially chasing these two Aboriginal guys because they killed a cow.
Killed a cow, yeah.
And they seek refuge with other Indigenous Australians. And then as they're chasing them, it all goes awry and there ends up being a massacre. And then we skip 12 years later and the one surviving boy is now part of a mission outpost. Anyway, that's kind of that's the thrust of the movie. It's kind of dealing with the events of 12 years ago, this massacre, and kind of how not just the people that were involved, but Australia as a whole and kind of the government and, people dealt with that. And it does go into kind of the weight of that hanging over people for 12 years. Anyway.
Exactly. I think it's confrontational and it's really well put together in terms of how it sort of confronts Australia's very dark history. I don't think I can't recall many movies that really sort of
show a massacre,
put the onus on the settlers and what exactly happened. Sometimes it's sort of glossed over a bit, but I think at the heart of this film, it's got essentially early white settlement and basically the war, the conflicts that arose because of that and does it. So essentially, these guys who were seeking refuge at an Indigenous camp had killed a cow. that became a massacre of an entire Aboriginal family.
Yeah, and while it might be a fictional story, you can imagine dozens of these kind of incidents happening and nobody ever hears about it. It never becomes a story and it's never part of Australia's history. But it is, this is kind of like an interesting concept where fiction can kind of sometimes tell the truth more than the truth can, because we have a history. Australia has a history. We've all learned Australian history in those sort of sarcastic quotation marks. While this is a fictional story, it rang very true.
Yeah, it's like Australian history colorized.
Yeah,
it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Like the color was so good. So like I said, the performances were introducing Jacob Jr. Nayinggul.
Yeah,
I believe is
what we're going with.
So this was his first ever feature film.
It was great.
He was the little boy that had grown up 12 years later, and he really carried the film. I feel like he brought a naivety to his character and also an innocence. And you can see his character. We're not going to get into spoilers, but you can see his character's progression into the decisions that they made in the movie, and I thought that was really well done. So I essentially only had a few little things that I found a little bit questionable. So the finale,
we won't get quite into the finale just yet.
Okay, but the pacing at times throughout the middle. So I mentioned the opening act. I thought it was outstanding. I really couldn't find anything wrong or any sort of points against it. The pacing in the middle and sometimes at the end felt a little aloof at sometimes, but that only takes a little bit of points away, if that makes sense.
I actually kind of liked the sort of middle section of the movie because it was slow. There's no doubt about it, but I don't think it was slow in a kind of negative way that you might, this was a slow movie. It was more like a slow burn, and it was kind of just living in that world. And I mean, that was one thing I really liked about the movie was that you really did feel like you were drawn into the world. And this is what I love in movies, where you feel like you are living in this time and place that you have no experience with. Neither of us have any experience with post-World War I Central Australian kind of outback settler life. And this movie really brings you into the middle of that really effectively. The production value, the attention to detail is so high that at no point in the movie was I thinking, this is a movie. I was just watching this story unfold. The only distracting bit kind of is that Simon Baker's in it, and Simon Baker is just so kind of uber famous as an Australian actor. But he was awesome in it. Like, I still really liked Simon Baker.
He was fantastic, a really strong lead.
And that was one part of the movie that I was worried about, with Simon Baker being the lead of this sort of Indigenous revenge tale, was that he was going to be a bit white savior kind of vibe, but it wasn't. It kind of skirted around the white savior thing. But I mean, that is possibly a criticism of the movie, not one that I would necessarily put too much to, but that the main character is kind of a white guy who's kind of trying to save these Indigenous people, which,
But I think he makes mistakes along the way.
He does. For sure.
His character is not a white knight type savior. His character's
good
several
guy.
shades of grey, and so he like that. I think that's what's great too. He wasn't that white savior, perfect, guy.
No.
It's like from our time transported back into
No.
the 1800s.
And that was-
I will quickly
sorry.
just mention. So Jack Thompson was also in it. He was very
he
very
was
good.
Warren.
He's
He was the sort of police commissioner, the
police
kind of
commissioner.
old guy, kind of definitely of a different ilk to the Simon Baker character.
Yep, and he sort of played that classic character very well. He's just always a joy to watch on screen. I will just mention Ryan Course. I don't know if you heard much about him, but
Which one did he play?
He played the father.
Oh,
The father, like the padre that was sort of like running the missionary.
he barely had anything to do in the movie, didn't he? The
Yeah,
priest.
but he's just such a... I've always had a problem with him, I've got to say.
Really?
Like,
I've never
I just
seen him.
find him a wooden actor. And
I liked it at the start when he was when the massacre started happening, and he's the priest obviously, so he's not happy about the massacre, and he's panicking and he's throwing up and he's kind of got spittle flying out of his mouth. And
Yeah, to me, it's overacting. I think that's overacting.
I believed it.
I didn't.
Well, see, I don't know the guy, so I don't have any preconceived notions about him. But then for the rest of the movie, I don't know if the character didn't do anything, or maybe the actor just wasn't memorable enough for me to remember anything that he did, because I felt like the
of
priest
both.
character just disappeared.
Yeah, no, I think that's it. I think he didn't have a really strong presence on screen, and he was kind of just, I don't know why he was cast, to be honest.
I don't know why the
honestly,
character existed.
I just know that this guy is someone that they've tried to make happen, kind of like Jai Courtney.
Well, he's kinda
an
handsome.
Australian. Yeah, exactly. So anyway, I found him a little bit.
Sorry, Ryan Core. You're out.
Cool. Yeah, mate.
Cool, blimey. Anyway.
Well, I think that's about it. Look, I think there was another character introduced halfway through the movie, the nephew of said character, Moran.
Oh, was he actually the nephew? Yeah, okay. So there's like the young police officer. It's kind of comic relief, I suppose.
He's comic relief, and
Which do you need comic relief in a Western?
his character was a bit given too much of a role, I think. He was like kind of good to have on screen for a few laughs, and then he's kind of like Pippin.
Yeah, he
Lord
was
of the
definitely a
Rings
Pippin type.
coming
Just
in.
bumbling young fool of a police
Fool of
officer.
He is a bit of a fool of a took, and that's the only thing. Aside from that, I was really, really blown away with how good this movie was, because I was going in expecting it to be quite good.
Well, I liked. Also, another thing that I liked was the sort of thematic elements around, race, obviously, and your people, and kind of what that means. Even Simon Baker, who's allegedly kind of the good guy, the good white guy, still doesn't fully understand the culture, and is still a massive fucking problem for parts of the movie.
Exactly.
I liked that a lot of the characters, there was like degrees of racism, even though it was all kind of the same. There's like the overt racists who are just, calling them racial slurs and just want to kill them and stuff. And then there's kind of the next tier who are not so overt, but then when push comes to shove, they're like, why would you ever care about a black person over a white person? And then there's kind of like the good guy who still doesn't fully understand the culture and is still doing damage. So I liked that there were all these different elements that kind of made me more... That was one thing I was more aware of issues that I had previously considered, but this movie sort of crystallized them in a way that I hadn't internally before. So full points to the movie for that.
No, I think that's pretty, like, succinctly said. Like, that's what I got from the movie too. But I'll be very interested to hear where you really...
Okay,
'cause we haven't argued yet.
What's going on? I know. We're getting through the good bits now. Let's get to the negative bits. First up was the dialogue for a lot of parts. Hard to pinpoint exactly where and remember the specific lines, but I just remember there were points throughout the movie consistently, kind of, every 10, 15 minutes, you just get a beat of, it's really kind of bad dialogue.
Do you have any examples?
Unbelievable. It's hard to remember the specific examples, but it's more just kind of, I just kind of went, you just roll your eyes at it and you go, all right. There were kind of a couple of tropes that I didn't like. Apart from that, we'll have to get into spoilers now. We're about halfway through the pod, so we'll get into spoilers now. It didn't stick the landing. I think that's the big problem for me. It did not stick the landing. Whereas, it had all these things to say, and then the end, we'll just sort of get into it, just ends in pretty much everybody getting fucking killed. That's it. Just everybody dies. Which seems just like a easy out. It's like they didn't know how to finish the movie. I kind of thought they were going a full circle thing because the movie starts with a massacre And then Simon Baker ends up kind of causing another massacre by. So Simon Baker is watching over. What's the character's name? Gajuk. As he's talking with his uncle, and his uncle is kind of threatening him with a spear, and Simon Baker thinks the uncle is going to kill his friend, so he shoots the uncle. He wasn't going to, and then it sort of breaks out into another massacre, and then another group of indigenous people are killed, and then that leads to all of the white characters also getting killed.
So I didn't think he thought he was going to kill him. I thought he took his shot. I think he really did want to bring this uncle of Gajuk to justice. And he took his shot at that moment where he sort of felt...
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing. I don't think Simon Baker's this really great character, and I think that's really good for this movie that he's not.
Yeah, okay.
But he essentially is trying to undo the wrongs that he felt he did 12 years ago, along with his sort of not-so-esteemed colleague.
Yeah.
And he takes on responsibility, and I think he kind of tries to do too much, and that's like it's on a flaw of the character. I think it's just a realistic...
It's a character flaw, not a flaw of the writing.
Of the writing, that's correct, yeah.
So I thought that he was just, Also, yeah, let's talk about the motivations for characters doing things kind of felt weird throughout the movie. Like Simon Baker's reasoning for, coming back to help them after 12 years. He doesn't want to, and then the Moran character's like, we got through the war, we'll get through this together. I was like, is that enough reason to come back to it? Same with Gajuk and just various characters throughout the movie. It felt like the movie just kind of needed to move along to the next scene without having really strong character motivations.
Yeah, look, Simon Baker's character is very interesting in terms of the decisions he makes. He makes right ones, he makes wrong ones. I think he was essentially trying to undo the mistakes he did sort of 12 years ago. So he was never
but
really...
He didn't really
he was... Yeah, but I think he thinks he was trying to do that, but he never really was on Moran's and the other guy's side. I think he was...
He was just kind of caught up in the massacre. He was
coming back he wouldn't have come back if it was just some kind of random or hunt. It was like, we're searching for this nephew who he knows who shot the nephew. So he kind of wants to bring him to justice.
They're trying to guilt Simon Baker's character into it as if he did anything wrong, where it was all the other characters that did something wrong. That was kind of what was weird to me.
Well, I think he wasn't able to get his story in first. So obviously his colleague would have said, this is what happened.
Yeah, true.
This is my involvement. This is Simon Baker's involvement.
Yeah, because he does say, tell Moran whatever you want. I'm not going to hang around for it. Yeah.
So, but he also did shoot the other kind of white guys that were with him, the white soldiers. So
which makes him kind of a really good guy in a way, because he's killing.
But they also think, oh, hang on, why have you shot these people that were sent to help you? See, again, he hasn't had his chance to tell his side of the story. He knows what...
So were you satisfied with the ending then? How?
No, so my only problem with the ending was just the characters they used to do certain things at the end. So to make the final shots.
Yeah,
that was my
the
problem.
nephew being the one to kill Simon Baker. I mean, come on. That was so... Like, the comic relief character just shoots Simon Baker out of nowhere and then runs away. It's like, it was so annoying that he was just... You shoot, run away, and then that's his whole character.
I don't like... Yeah, he's like the baby, got the gun, like the baby. The gun pulls the baby, bang, shoots the guy. Oh, it's like... And, but also the female lead, I guess, or not lead, but the sister of the father, which sounds confusing, but you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, the sister of the priest, yeah. See, I thought her character could have kind of taken over the priest's role as well. There didn't need to be a priest. They could have just had her as like a woman who helps at the mission outpost, like a nun or whatever. Mm-hmm. And she just, because the priest character didn't have a purpose. And when the church was burning, I felt nothing. That was almost supposed to be kind of a sad, like, oh, the church is burning. I don't care.
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. I think her character was meant to mean a lot more to the film, and it didn't mean anything. Her character really was bland to me.
I love when the mob comes to the town and then they can't work out a negotiation deal, so the mob kind of goes back. But then all of the indigenous people who had been living at the mission for years, they just fuck off with them. Like, it was so perfect. Like, these white people have been trying to kind of make them white for years and years and years. As soon as the tribe shows up, they're like, yeah, we're fucking off with them. Yeah, love that.
Good call.
I liked early in the movie the wild mob thing. It was very kind of like revolutionary kind of shit, which I like revolutionary stuff. It was very much kind of like the white oppressors And instead of kind of negotiating with them or trying to work out deals or whatever, they just fucking burn shit. I mean, that's the impetus of the movie, is that the uncle who survives the massacre at the start of the movie, he starts a wild mob that, burns down stations and kills wildlife and stuff. And then he crosses a line when he kills a white woman. That's the whole thing of the movie. It's like, it was fine when they were just killing animals and burning down the place, but he crossed a line. He killed a white woman. I loved that shit throughout, and that was kind of sprinkled throughout the movie of, how, and I mean, this movie was set not that long ago. It was post World War One, and that kind of attitude. You think, I mean, you don't really think, but I think when we kind of were in school and stuff, they tried to make it out like this thing happened thousands of years ago, almost. Not within a couple of generations, like within living memory. This kind of stuff happened where. And I mean, if like
Simon
your
Bacon.
grandfather had that attitude of, indigenous people's lives are just worth less, and that was not even a conscious thought. It was just kind of known internally. I mean, this movie did raise a lot of interesting points for me. It was great for that. But my main issue with the movie is the whole finale just kind of fell apart at the end. It's like a house of cards and just because in the end, I don't know what, it had lots of points throughout the movie. But what was the point of the movie's story? You know what I mean?
No, that's the thing. I don't agree. I think you've seen plenty of Westerns, and you see a Western shootout at the end, and you see essentially it's all for nothing. Like, you see this sort of revenge. So, my family's been killed by your family, and we're going to get revenge by killing your... Yeah, that's how it all just tit for tat. And I think the end... I felt
violence begets violence. Kind of thing.
Violence begets violence.
That was a big point.
It was
of the
all
movie.
just for nothing. Like, they all killed each other for nothing. And they kind of say, I think the friend of Simon Baker says at the end, we can't share a country, and that's the attitude for both sides in terms of, like, you do have the Aboriginal elder trying to make peace, but the crown, who's represented by Jack Thompson, he's just not hearing it. He's saying, I want justice. And they say, what about justice for our family when we got massacred? And he's like,
don't worry about that.
He doesn't care about that. That's the thing. I felt it hit the nail on the head in terms of the finale wasn't perfect, but I still felt it resonated, and it had a point to the story. And the finale maybe didn't sort of land perfectly, but it landed. I'm on that flight, and I'm like, oof, damn, like that was a bit of a bumpy landing, but,
but we made it. Still applaud for the pilot.
Yeah.
I felt nothing at the end. I felt that I was supposed to feel more, about the sadness of everybody just kind of killing each other for no reason. I think you're supposed to feel nihilistic. You're supposed to kind of feel the weight of the void of all this violence.
Like empty.
But I just felt nothing. I was just kind of like, man, that's kind of disappointing.
Okay. Well, yeah, that's where I think that's our big disagreement.
That's our big disagreement. But that makes a big difference to me is that, I mean, while the movie had many points it raised, many things to say, the point of the movie itself, the plot that we're going along with, sort of has to have its own crescendo and conclusion and point to it as well. And I didn't see that because it just ended in them all shooting each other and nobody learned anything. But maybe that's the point of it. Maybe nobody was supposed to learn anything.
We talked about it last few episodes. You want something fresh on screen. You want something, like you said, you want to have a
which a lot of this movie was fresh.
Yeah, exactly. I think it was really kind of inspired, and a lot of what we were seeing I hadn't seen before as a feature film. So, well,
the filmmaking itself was fantastic. The craftsmanship of the movie.
But I think the story as well. I think the story hasn't been really done in terms of
I agree.
We've had this sort of like there's always been a white savior character, I think, or a character that's sort of transported from our time back into post World War I. So I think we don't have any of that, and that's what I felt. All the characters were grounded in the reality of the times, and I really I take stock in that.
Yeah. Well, I'm actually really interested in seeing a movie that doesn't have the white perspective at all, right? It's just the indigenous perspective from, maybe the Nepean and Hawkesbury Wars, or maybe like the First Fleet or whatever, just entirely their perspective. And I don't know if you need the Simon Baker side of the story in as much as I think that the studio wants it to kind of bring in more audience, have a relatable character on screen or whatever. But I would really like to see just that story without any of the...
But I think it does. It sort of brings in, say, like a character that you think is you in the movie, so
Yeah.
Simon Baker, and then it confronts you with decisions that he makes.
Yeah, true.
That
That's
you
a good
say,
point.
oh, why is he like? He sort of it's confrontational. I think it's
Because it makes you question yourself as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I think
that's
I
a
give
good
it
point.
marks for that. I do want to mention. What was I going to mention?
No, we're almost ready to wrap up, I think.
We're almost ready to wrap up. Yeah. So you have the final go. Actually, sorry, one more thing. I looked it up on IMDb. It's 6.3 audience score. I was pretty surprised by that. I really didn't think it would sit below
Well,
7.
I mean, they're Australians who are reviewing it, and we are a racist bunch. I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, but like I think there's a good movie if you sort of I
It is
found that
confronting.
surprising. I did find that surprising. But I mean, like I thought 6.3. Wow, I was
That is low.
expecting like an 8, but 6.3 is pretty low. But maybe it's just early days for the reviews.
All right, so I'll give you my wrap up of the movie.
Okay.
It's a beautiful movie. A lot of it is innovative, really exciting, inspiring kind of stuff. Like you said, the sound design and how it's shot blew me away. The acting was great. Simon Baker was great. Junior was great. What's his name? Jacob Junior.
Nayinggul.
Nayinggul, thank you.
Nayinggul.
It's upside down. It's hard to read. The two leads were great. My issues with the dialogue and the final act, in my opinion, completely fell apart, and they didn't know how to end the movie, and then just ended it in the way that they did. So my overall mark is and this is why I need to go back on the dry and other movies and take them down a bit, because I've given this movie a 7.
A 7. Okay. I was thinking you're going to go lower. So
No.
7.
Maybe I should start going lower. I give movies way too much credit because I don't think I've ever rated like a 2 movie apart from maybe Now You See Me or something. But there are movies. See,
Now
for
You
me,
See Me
5 is kind of like that's minimum almost. 5 is kind of like, okay, 5 is they've done all the basics. It's not complete shit. And then anything else above is, but that's probably a bad rating system. Anyway, 7.
7, yeah. No, fair enough. What did you give Now You See Me 2?
Well, Now You See Me 0.5.
Oh.
I haven't actually seen the second one.
No,
Why would I fucking watch the second one? The first one, hey, for any listeners out there, Now You See Me is my least favorite movie of all time. There you go.
No, you don't.
Now you fuck off.
I've said I think it's an Australian classic. I really do. I was blown away by the beauty of this movie.
Yeah.
And then I said before, I liked how you see some real kind of shit on the screen. I love that. I love that you see some crap. Like, it's like Saving Private Ryan, kind of like you see some gore, which we didn't see last movie.
Actually, I did like the gore. Yeah, it's real.
Yeah. It's like confronting. I found the performances really great.
Except for Ryan Core.
Yeah, Ryan Core, you got a notable mention. The score was wonderful. I really was into this film. I was immersed. I was fully immersed.
Yeah.
I found the finale. I had a few problems, but I still felt it landed. So with all that kind of everything being equal, I give this a 9. A strong 9.
A 9. There you go. Well, it's a recommendation from both of us. This is it's an Australian movie. It's enjoyable to watch. You're going to get a lot out of it, regardless, I think. So yeah, High Ground. Check it out. We watched it at Dendy Cinemas. Dendy, if you're listening, we'd be really interested in a sponsorship. I don't know if you're looking to sponsor any podcasts with a couple dozen.
Dendy's the only cinema in Australia. That's a tagline, I believe. Or it's going to be.
Yeah, well, there's a couple of
Where else can you watch a movie? Where?
That's right. I mean, Netflix.
No, you can't.
Net shits.
Hoyts.
I might edit that bit out.
Noits. Well, net shits.
Palace Electric.
What
More
if we
like
want to get
Palace-
Netflix as a sponsor too? We can get them both. Netflix, we take it back. Stan.
I
Stan's
actually really
crap.
like Stan's great. Stan's better than Netflix.
No, the sound's horrible.
The sound's horrible.
Yeah, I have to turn up my volume like all the way. Yeah.
Well, there's much better movies than Stan or Netflix. You've got one of each. Anyway, Dendy Cinemas, that's where you should watch High Ground. I don't know why. Also, before we go, we should mention we're on the social medias. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, pick your poison. They're all poison.
Pick all of them.
Yeah, pick all. It's the same content on all three. So just have a look at that.
You get slightly different takes.
Yeah.
I reckon. So you got to go all of them.
Yeah, we don't bother doing a Twitter graphic, so you can't really see the picture when it goes on Twitter. But that's where all the good... Actually, I was doing some film Twitter conversation mainly about Blair Witch. I keep talking about that.
Yeah, maybe we'll watch
the
Blair
next
Witch.
one.
Or we
Actually,
might
what
find-
we're going to do is we're going to also start alternating a little bit, and we'll do some classic movies as well. We've done some new movies, but not everybody can see the new movies right away. So we're also going to do some classics. I don't know what we're going to do next week. Maybe a classic horror like Blair Witch. Who knows? We're going to do something. So wait for that one. Check it out when it's out. That'll be next Sunday. And yeah, Nicholas, anything else?
Yeah, so essentially we're going to wait until Denny's gets back to us, the sponsorship, and then we'll go back to Denny's
Yeah,
and
that's
keep
right.
watching movies.
Actually, they have the Indiana Jones trilogy tomorrow.
Oh, God, I hope they hurry.
All right, catchphrase for the episode, Nicholas?
I've said heaps today, so pick your poison. That's it.
That's it. All right, thank you for listening. We'll be back next week on The Hack and the Fraud.